Zoom recording. Okay. So just to kind of review real quick for the purposes of the video, when you quote, remember to put the page number here. When you're quoting for a film, you put how many hours into the film it is, how many, minutes into the film it is, and around how many seconds. So this is how you cite. You can also do The Dark Knight. For us, for The Dark Knight, because the director is kind of a big deal, you can also just do the director's last name. Okay. So I wanted to kind of review and go over what's important to include in summaries of secondary sources, and how to kind of cite. Now this is for me, this is MLA, so Modern Language Association. There are other citation and style rules, but I'm most familiar with MLA, so that's the one I kind of use. Okay. Other classes might have you use APA. Okay. All right. So I'd also like to talk a little bit about what you guys posted last class for superhero film conventions. So these are kind of like they make a genre, right? A genre has similarities in things like plot structure, character types, stuff like that. So if you think about some of what you posted last time, what is a common plot for superhero films? You remember? Either what you said or what we talked about.
Also, I mean, like, were you talking about when they have to deal with adversity, and
Yes.
then they have to basically deal with a problem, face adversity, and then overcome it towards the end of the movie, and then you see.
Yeah. So like there's like so they face some kind of challenge or adversity, usually in the form of a villain, right? It's although some of them have personal problems, but usually it's the form of a villain, right? Here's some other elements of superhero films. Some of them, although they've kind of moved away from this recently, but some superhero films have origin stories. So can you think of examples of like films with origin stories?
Spider-Man.
What was that, Julian?
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man. Yep. A lot of the Spider-Man movies are like origin stories. Batman Begins, which is the prequel to Dark Knight, is all about like what happened to Bruce to turn him into Batman. Other origin stories?
Pretty much any of the firsts.
Exactly, right? So Iron Man, the first Iron Man is an origin story. Even Wonder Woman is an origin story. Black Panther is a bit of an origin story. So in a lot of superhero films, it starts with an origin story, and then the world is in danger. Usually it's the whole world. Sometimes it's localized to a city. And the hero has to save it through an epic physical battle. I also wanted to add is most of the time in superhero films, there is a love interest, but the love interest is almost like the hero almost never ends up with the girl. Can you think of examples where this happens?
Well, Tony and Pepper. It's the saddest one.
Which one?
Tony and Pepper.
Yeah. But they had a little bit of time together. But yeah, Tony and Pepper. Others you think?
The second Spider-Man, I think, where Mary Jane dies.
Most of the Spider-Mans, like Mary Jane is like sort of there, but like they never have a good relationship, right? Like where they're like kind of just together and uncomplicated, right? Thor never ends up with his lady, right? Natalie Portman. Hulk. Captain America, right? So
he
like
gets the girl
eventually, but it took him like took him 20 years, right? 15 years to get the girl. Good, Ben. Yeah. What else? Any other movies you're thinking of that might be challenge this?
Wonder Woman.
He dies though. You know, like it's actually like really hard to find like examples that challenge this, which kind of means like it's true of most genres for me. Like it's one of the defining elements of the genre. Um, themes for superhero films seem to be like good versus evil, right? Protection. The superhero has to protect people, and he does it because it's the right thing to do. That's called altruism. There is always moments of doubt for the superheroes, sometimes guilt, or other obstacles that are overcome. So like there's always like a almost like a subplot of like the hero is having a personal struggle, but he overcomes, and then that kind of like is like the test run, and that allows him to overcome the villain, right? Makes sense. Like it seems like that's a pretty common theme. I have for character types, there's always a hero, there's always a villain, there's pretty much always a love interest. There is occasionally a sidekick. Settings, pretty straightforward. Urban city or larger universe. And now we're thinking iconic imagery. So iconic imagery I have is like costumes, insignia, but also like one we didn't mention last class that I was thinking of is like the headquarters or the home base. Like for Batman, it's always the Batcave, right? It's kind of like iconic. Batman has to have a Batcave and a Batmobile, right? Superman, I don't know if he has this in the movies because I can't remember the movies, but like back in the comics, he had like a Fortress of Solitude. Spider-Man has, his like crummy apartment. It's always some kind of like headquarters. There's usually an epic battle scene. That's iconic. And there's even like jokes about superhero landings. Do you guys know what I mean by a superhero landing?
The knee down, the foot, the fist, the
Yeah.
Iron Man.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Like, yeah, good. Yeah. There's even jokes about it in Deadpool, like the superhero landings, everyone does it. So cool, but it's hell on the knees, right? So even like certain movements or shots are iconic. I did want to kind of say like it's hard for us to think about, but originally, say back, 10 or 15 years ago, they usually actually cast no names or unknown actors that become stars through their superhero performance. So Tobey Maguire is probably an exception to this. He was kind of known before that, but if you think about, and you guys probably don't remember this, but when X-Men came out back in 2000, like Hugh Jackman was an unknown.
He was a stage actor or something.
Was an Australian stage actor, and they cast him as Wolverine, and that role kind of made his career. Chris Hemsworth was kind of an unknown before Thor, and even now he's still so associated with Thor. It's hard for him to play other roles, right?
RDJ was a drug addict and in and out of jail and rehab.
Yeah. So Robert Downey Jr. was an 80s star that kind of corrupted by Hollywood, and Iron Man is kind of his reinvention of himself. Henry Cavill was not known before cast as Superman. Christian Bale was kind of an indie actor, so he had done American Psycho before Batman, but that was kind of it. Like that was the thing he was most known for, and even that was kind of small. Gal Gadot was unknown before Wonder Woman. There are exceptions, but not too many. So the stars are actually, unlike, in a lot of other films, they usually try to find young stars who are generally kind of unknown to cast them. And those are, I would say, the more successful films is, Ben Affleck as Batman hasn't really gone over all that well, right? So it works better if the stars are unknown. Okay, so I just kind of wanted to, I don't know if you guys want to take a screenshot of this or but like feel free to. I'll pause so you can feel free to take a screenshot if you'd like. While I pull up, whoops, that's for a different class. While I pull up The Dark Knight. Oh, I need to, you actually need to see the screen to take a screenshot, don't you? Hold on. Okay. All right. I assume you're good. All right, let me just load up this movie. No. See if I got that right. Okay, good. Already have an account, please. Sorry. Why? Sorry. Why is it not working? All right, here we go. Watch.
You're not getting shot at. You're not doing your job right.
So I wanted to kind of talk about, so given that these are what we think of as the superhero film conventions, like in what ways do you think that The Dark Knight is a conventional superhero film? What are some of the ways it fits into like the genre or helps even to define the genre?
You got your classic antagonist.
Yeah, a really good antagonist in the form of the Joker, right? Heath Ledger won an Oscar for this role. It was like so iconic that like some people still say that he's like their Joker. He's the best Joker. So we have an iconic villain. What else? What are some other kind of superhero film conventions?
I mean, you could just go down the list on that slide. It had it all.
Right. Let me see. Oops. So this is true. Love interest is suggested but not obtained. These are true. Character types. The sidekick would maybe be Alfred setting. Superhero landing.
Batcave. It had the Batmobile. It had the Bat motorcycle. It had all of it. Whatever you want to say about being a conventional superhero film, it was a conventional superhero film. It was just a very well done one.
I would say the first half is a conventional superhero film. Okay, and I'll kind of show you kind of more support. Like if I were writing a paper, I would say like, here's some of the evidence that this is kind of fitting into our kind of conventional superhero. It's like when the movie begins, he's got the mob bosses running scared. And he's got this elaborate plan to get their money. Like he and Gordon have this thing planned. Like the marked bills and stuff. If you look at the very first scene where we see where we see him, let me just check. This is about 10 minutes in. It's even a bit of a cameo.
I like reminding everybody that he's out there.
Why wouldn't he come?
From the villain from the first movie.
Because he's busy.
this. How is this scene? How is the superhero different from like the vigilantes that we see? And how does this help us define what a superhero film is? Go ahead.
So they're shooting like sawed-off shotguns, and he's bending gun barrels.
Exactly. So we have like he's a superhero because he can do superhuman things like bend gun barrels. Like and the idea is like it's his suit that allows him to do this, but still it's pretty superheroic that he can do that, right? Other stuff that you kind of see as kind of evidence of him being kind of like a superhero.
He's not wearing hockey pads.
He's not wearing hockey pads, which is the quote, right? From a few minutes later. Julian, did you have something?
I just said the car.
Yes.
When he pulls
Yeah.
up, you know that's actually him.
It's like he's got this, he's got literally like a tank, right? A tank car. It's almost like sentient, like it intimidates and then it fires, right? Without like him necessarily having to like be in it or drive it. Good. Other stuff. He's definitely got the superhero landing, right? Yeah. So let's see, where am I? So it's a conventional superhero film because like he doesn't really have that much that's a challenge to him right now. He's got the mob bosses running scared. He can bend the gun barrel. He jumps off the railing and lands on the van in a superhero one. In a similar scene, about half an hour in, there's the mob's accountant Lau fled to Hong Kong. And Batman is able to kind of grab him pretty easily. 835. Yeah, let's so he like, yeah, it might, he's very much a larger than life traditional superhero in a lot of ways. I'm just going to show you, I'll probably skip the one where he grabs Lau from Hong Kong, but what is like special or unique about this? Do you guys remember?
Like the way that he like set everything up and then snuck away with him, like grappling onto the plane while it was leaving.
Yeah, the plane just kind of drags him into the sky like you do, right? At one point he jumps off the building and instead of like falling off a skyscraper, he's like swooping around. Like, so Batman can like more or less fly. Is it almost even able to like bend the laws of physics, right? A plane goes by and drags him off and he's fine. And he dangles Lau over all of Hong Kong, right? I wanted to just show you briefly the scene also where he like is able to save the girl. These are all instances of traditional superheroism, I would say. So this is about 52 minutes in. This is when the Joker's at the party. Let me just pause recording.
He had a very poor choice of words.
Very poor choice of words. So the Joker is like not interested in like doing games, right? He lets her go. So she falls from a skyscraper and keep going.
He jumps out to save her too, and then he basically braces the fall.
Yep. He is able to help her survive a fall from a skyscraper, right? And like her response here, like he's like, "Oh, are you all right?" And she's like, "Oh, let's do not do that again," right? Like her response here sort of seems to imply that like even though she was screaming, she never had any doubt that he would save her, right?
Yeah.
Like he's he's such a superhero that like in a split second he can save someone from falling off being thrown off a skyscraper, right? Also no hesitation. He knows the right thing. He does it. No hesitation. And also like it's sort of extra unbelievable / super heroic, right? It's unbelievable and yet it's exactly what we would expect of a superhero, is being able to kind of save someone falling from a skyscraper in midair. Okay, so in a lot of ways, The Dark Knight, I would say the first half sets up a lot of the conventions of traditional superheroes. Sorry. You know, he is like a kind of a larger than life traditional superhero. But even from the beginning, there are hints that maybe there are hints that of doubt about the traditional superhero thing. Can you think of some of the ways, like some of the ways that the film kind of raises questions or doubts or challenges traditional superheroism?
They show a dude doing it the right way a lot, like the politically correct way a lot.
So Harvey, are you saying Harvey?
Yeah, like the white knight aspect of the Dark Knight, like
Yes.
the whole like here, look, we can do it this way, and he's out there still beating up people.
Yeah. So like there's a suggestion that like you know, he's inspiring all these vigilantes, guys with guns that are kind of operating outside the law in a problematic way. Harvey Dent says you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And like this is a pretty so a radical kind of comment for a superhero movie, right? It's so iconic now that we don't even think about it, but like that our heroes need to die or else they will become villains, that no one is able to have such power without abusing it eventually. You know, about an hour in is kind of where I start to see the shift. The mob boss named Maroni, the Italian mob boss, he says, you know, to Batman, they're wise to your act. You got rules. The Joker, he's got no rules. Do you remember what Batman does right around when Maroni says this? To get him to talk? What Batman does to get Maroni to talk?
He throws him off like not a building, like a railings, but it doesn't kill him. It like breaks his foot or leg.
Legs, both of them, right? Like Maroni says, you know, from one professional to another, a fall from this height, it's not going to kill me. And Batman's like, oh, I'm counting on it. And then he drops him and he breaks both his legs. And so there is a kind of element of maybe like, okay, like maybe Batman is going a little too far. He's like torturing people to get information, breaking people's legs. That's kind of a mob boss thing, not a hero thing. A few minutes later, he says to Alfred, I've seen now what I would have to become to stop men like the Joker. You know, Alfred says that he's not being a hero, he's being something more. But there's all these kinds of challenges to traditional superheroism. I also wanted to ask you guys about the Joker. How is the Joker not exactly a traditional villain? So he is a traditional villain. He challenges our superhero, but in what ways is he not so much a traditional villain?
He doesn't really have any powers. Like he does everything through like explosives and stuff that like a normal human can do.
Knives, guns, gunpowder, right? He actually likes like the low tech. The lower tech the weapons are, the more he likes them. So he's like, yes, he's definitely way more like kind of low tech. Other ways he's not a traditional villain.
He's a complete sociopath. There's never been an origin story to the Joker, and then
Good.
so you don't know where he came from. He's scary. Like, yeah, the whole just wants to watch the world burn was pretty perfect for every Joker that's ever been. That's kind of the point of the Joker.
But especially for this one, right? Especially for this one, because in other ones, the Joker kind of wants, you know, sometimes he does want money, sometimes he wants to rule Gotham or rule Gotham's crime world. That's not true of this Joker at all, right? He doesn't want money. He doesn't want power. He just wants to watch the world burn. And they have a scene where he literally does that, right? He sets up this big pile, this mountain of money. He sets it on fire, right? So it's not clear who this Joker is, his history or his motivations. He has a complete lack of origin story, or he has multiple origin stories. So why is the Joker the way he is? What are some of the stories he tells about his past, how he got his scars?
He has the abusive father, and then the other one was the scorned ex-lover, and he gives a bunch of reasons as to why he is the way he is. It's not just one reason; it's all of the reasons.
So he at first he says, like, I had an alcoholic father, and he looked at me and he said, why so serious? After he killed my mother and stabbed her to death, and he carved a smile in my face, right? And then later on, he says, "Oh, I had a wife who was beautiful, and she got in deep with the sharks, and they carved up her face, and I just want to see her happy again. So I carved up my face so that we could be together. But now she can't stay on the side of me, and she left me." Like, these are two very different stories, which implies that both of them are probably lies, right? We can't trust the Joker. We can't trust what he says. We can't trust his history. So we actually don't know where he came from. His true identity is never revealed, right? No one ever finds out that he's like, oh, he's Matthew Smith from 4th Street, playing. He doesn't have an identity. Even when he's captured by the cops, they're like, there's, his clothing is custom, no labels, so they don't know where he got it. He doesn't use credit cards, he only uses cash. The only thing in his pockets is like knives and pocket lint, right? Also, unlike most traditional villains, he forces people to make impossible ethical decisions, right? I'm thinking, here where he said to Batman, pick who to save, Harvey or Rachel, right? And then a little bit later, if Coleman Reese isn't dead, so Coleman Reese is like the horrible guy who worked for Bruce Wayne, who's like went on TV to say, "I know who Batman is," right? Joker says, if Coleman Reese isn't dead within 60 minutes, I'll blow up a hospital. He's almost like getting people to kind of do horrible things. Batman, pick one to save. Like normal people, kill someone, or I hurt others, right? So these are ethical dilemmas. And then the biggest one, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, it's crazy too for like with Joker, he uses like other people to get what he wants to, like you see in the beginning when they were robbing the bank. The other thieves were just ended up like when they were getting to a certain checkpoint, they were just shooting each other and they were killing each other. And then finally Joker then and shit and stuff like that.
Yeah, like I was thinking the ferry scene. I thought that might be where you ended up going, right? But yeah, Joker is like, he's not interested in money, he's not interested in power, he's interested in proving how awful people are. Right? He's interested in proving how when push comes to shove, everyone is at heart selfish and horrible and uncivilized and barbaric, right?
That comes into play when he's picking like his crew, and there's like 3 guys, and he drops like a crowbar or something in the middle of them, and he's like, "Make it happen. Like, I don't want it to be too long."
Yeah, right. Is a broken bull cue, right? He's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
Our organization is small, but there's the opportunity for aggressive expansion, but we only have one spot open. So you have to kill your best friend if you want to get into our group / live." Yes, good. So he forces people to do things that they never could have contemplated before, and face up to their own kind of corrupt natures.
I also think one thing that's definitely different with ethical decisions is that in other superhero movies, it's either like the superhero has to make the decision, but like in this movie, it's the people of Gotham that have to choose between right and wrong.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge difference as well.
And so this movie is making comments or questions not only about whether superheroes are really truly heroic or some of the challenges of how they're heroes, but also like whether people are worth saving, right? And I think Joker would say like people are not worth saving, people are corrupt, and Batman would prefer to believe that they're not. I remember what did I have here? There's some really famous kind of scenes. Let me just kind of get a sense of where I am in my presentation here. Moral dilemmas and hypocrisy. The Joker has like 2 big speeches. I'm just going to kind of give you the kind of like around when they happen, and we'll probably look at them later this later days, other classes. But the one is like to Harvey when he's in the hospital, right? And the other one is when he's in the interrogation room with Batman. So when he's in the interrogation room, he says like, "You changed things." Gosh, maybe I will show you the scene just because it's so good. So 127, just to kind of show you a clip of it. Whoops, stop, cancel, stop. I said 127, yeah, okay. So at this point, Rachel has not died yet. This point, he's captured Rachel and Harvey, and the police have him in custody. 26.
People, assuming, of course, that they are still your people and not Maroni's. Does it depress you, Commissioner, to know just how
It's kind of what his goal is, which is like to just kind of create chaos, but also it's helpful to kind of say, like, you know, the Joker says like he would have never gotten started if Batman hadn't started by breaking the rules, by taking things to extremes, right? So according to the Joker, Batman is the one that kind of started all this, that's kind of started the chaos, and Joker's just joining in because he thinks it's fun. According to the Joker, it's Batman kind of, you know, acting outside the law, using tanks and military weapons, you know, by civilians using those on the streets of the city, that kind of broke society. That broke civilization, and Joker's just kind of following it up and taking it to its logical extreme. So what are some of the failures of traditional heroism that you see in the film? What are some of the ways that Batman is unable to be a good, like a traditional hero?
Multiple people die.
Yeah, multiple people, and also like important people, right? The commissioner dies, the judge dies, Rachel dies, right? He's unable to save her the second time. He saves her the first time in kind of a gesture to regular heroism, but he's unable to kind of do it again. Other ways that he's kind of not a traditional hero?
He gives up the spotlight to Harvey and doesn't say like, hey, Harvey was actually a bad guy here, but he's like, hey, here's like, he's the White Knight now, like use him.
So at the end of the film, he hides the fact that Harvey turned, right, and committed all these murders. And so Batman lies to people about Harvey, right, and about himself. I have here, because we already sort of talked about when he dropped Maroni and broke his legs. Also, like the scene that I just showed you where he starts to beat up the Joker while in police custody. Like, there's a reason you're not allowed to use force and violence to interrogate subjects in police custody, right? Like, there's a reason that's against the law. But Batman, you know, kind of takes it too far. And even at some points, like the other cops who are watching through the one-way glass, they look at Gordon and they're like, should we go in there and stop him? And Gordon's like, no, he's in control. And then he does lose control, right? He takes it too far. Rachel gets blown up and she dies. The hospital gets blown up because he was busy saving the lawyer's life, right? And you think, like, we don't see anyone dying when the hospital got blown up, but
there was a school bus that was missing.
Yeah, it allowed, you know, Joker to kidnap Harvey and everyone else on that school bus. And like, you know, when people are in intensive care in a hospital, it's not that easy to move them like without loss of life. So there's the, like, maybe the implication that like there was some loss of life. At the very end, Batman beats up all the cops to save their lives, you know. So this is when like the Joker dresses all the hostages up as like his goons, and the SWAT team is going in and is about to kill all these innocent people that are tied up, and Batman, you know, beats all the SWAT people to kind of stop it. It's still kind of assaulting a police officer. And then towards the very end, Batman turns his computers into a surveillance state, right? Even Lucius Fox, he's looking at the computers and he's saying, you know, and Batman's like, oh, isn't it beautiful? And Lucius Fox is like, beautiful. unethical, right? Wrong. No one man should have all this power, and I can't work for you if you're going to abuse my technology like this. So Batman again takes it too far. So in a lot of ways, I think the movie is saying something really interesting about superheroes and ways that they are problematic, right? So I promise, like I'm on, like, let's see how much more I have. Let me see. Yeah, we're almost kind of to kind of the end. I promise I'll let you kind of do a activity soon instead of me just keep talking. So my question is, like, so in Dark Knight, there's a bunch of corrupt police officers. Is this film saying we should trust in authority figures like police forces, authority figures, even like superheroes? Or should we question them, suspect them? Do you think the film is saying we should trust in superheroes to always do the right thing or to make the hard decisions for the greater good? The one I did want to kind of show you the ferry scene because it's so important. Come on. Escape, please. I was pushing the wrong button. So this is around 2 hours into the film.
Ball up. If, however, one of you presses the button, I'll let that go.
The boat of citizens. What did they do? So they were talking about it. What did they end up doing?
You do a vote, a ballot.
They took a vote. So like everyone on the boat voted whether they should blow up the boat of prisoners or not, right? And what did they decide based on the vote? Yeah, so like they kind of democratically decided, fairly decided to commit a horrible mass murder action, right? And you know, what was I gonna say? Given that it's the Joker, he says that they have a switch to blow up the other boat. What do you think is actually, what boat do you think that switch is actually to?
Who's gonna blow up the civilian boat?
I think they actually even have their own boats, right? And so did you think that this scene, this ferry scene, was realistic?
Yes.
Keep going. Say more about that, Lucas.
I think it is realistic because Gotham, well, the whole democracy thing, because Gotham is like in America, so you know we vote for everything, and I think like what that guy was saying at a valid point, like we should all vote on it because you're represented, especially if it's something that has to deal with your life. And then yeah, I think that part's mostly realistic. And also surprised there wasn't like a mob of people or something that tried to go and pull a trigger, because earlier in the movie when that guy was going to reveal the truth about Batman's identity, like everybody was mostly gung-ho for taking his life. Yes. Versus this one. So
and everyone was like, Batman should reveal himself, you know, he's bad, you know, like when Harvey was trying to talk them out of it, like, no, we don't negotiate with terrorists. Everyone was like, no, like Batman, we got to get rid of Batman, give him to Joker, right? And so throughout the movie, people have kind of shown how self-interested they are, right? So I was thinking that the scene feels realistic for all the reasons that Lucas said. You know, it's America, so obviously we would vote, and just because we vote doesn't mean the outcome is right or good or fair, right? Other people, did you feel this scene was realistic?
Professor, I just want to ask you, what would you do in that scene?
Well, I feel like that's kind of where I'm going with this. Like, so ultimately this guy, you know, surprises everyone and throws the switch out the window. And this guy, you know, he's like, oh, no one wants to get their hands dirty. And he like picks up the switch to blow up the boat of prisoners, and he can't do it. And I feel like that's actually very unrealistic.
I would
Basic
challenge
thing.
that. I would challenge that. The Joker's whole point was to get the civilians to kill the bad guys because that completes the narrative. But oh my goodness, I would put a switch in any of your hands and say it's going to kill somebody. That is the hardest, especially if you don't know them. You're not hitting that button. I think that's a completely realistic scene.
Oh, interesting. There's always a split. There's always a split. Some people are like, yeah, I do. I believe that humans wouldn't blow up a stranger to save their own life.
Well,
Whereas,
that's the train question, the psychological question, pulling the switch. It's really hard. But I would
I
challenge
really feel like this guy, it's hard to believe that he didn't pull the switch.
like him. Yeah, he's all talk, no bite. Yeah.
Yeah, like he's kind of like, he's like, I don't know, entitled white guy of, who's rich and like patriarchal, like I feel like he would have pulled the switch.
I feel like for that exact reason, everything you're saying is that he wouldn't pull the switch.
Could be. And so like it's interesting because like it kind of tells you a little bit about kind of what you believe about people, right? And I guess I'm a little more cynical. Thomas is a little bit more optimistic about people, but
I think the Joker's overestimate themselves.
That is the Joker's whole point, right? And that's why Batman at the end kind of is able to kind of remain a superhero, is because he, gives them enough time to not blow up each other, and prevents the Joker from blowing everyone up, right?
But that's where I would challenge your point when you said that that's a scene that makes him not a villain, not a traditional villain. Because if you take the whole scene in the context, I see it as Batman knew that the situation on the boats was happening while he was fighting the police officers, but he wasn't no lethal means to these cops. Like he wasn't being mean to them. He's taking out their legs. He was hiding them. He was getting them away because he knew, like, he had faith in the people of Gotham. So I would challenge your point to say that that's actually a traditional. He let the people fight their own battle while he took care of ones that were given orders that he knew he couldn't communicate with.
So his intentions were heroic. I think you're right about that. But I was thinking like a failure of traditional heroism is like, it's kind of like where he comes up against the police officers and he has to beat up cops, which is like literally against the law, right? And so in that way, he's like a superhero who's breaking the law in order to do good. And
I mean, technically all superheroes are breaking the law all the time.
True.
Because I think all superheroes, like you're saying Captain America then is not a traditional superhero, like, but he's the tradition superhero. He's the hero of
it's not that. I think that this movie is raising questions about superheroes. I think that this movie is kind of trying to get us to think about, okay, like we kind of trust in superheroes, but don't forget superheroes are kind of breaking the law and acting outside of the law, and really, how do we feel about that? Does that make sense? The movie, I think, is trying to get us to think about that.
Yeah, I feel like you and I can have a really good talk, because I think this movie is trying to say, like, hey, have faith in what you don't know with superheroes. Like, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but they all want to kill Batman, and he's just like, dude, leave me alone. Like, I'm trying to help y'all out.
So you could write about this, and people are actually on both sides. So we're gonna, like, in the next couple of classes, we're gonna start to read articles about people who have argued the one side, that this movie is all about, like, how authority figures are bad, and then we're gonna look at the other side too, about how, like, we should just trust in superheroes. Basically, don't worry, Tom, we're gonna this is definitely not over. This topic. So I want to give you, now it's now only 5 minutes. I was hoping to give you like 10, maybe even a little longer, but like take some time. I want you to kind of pick one of the topics. There's so much in this movie, but that means you can pick the kind of topic and start to free write about some answers to any of these. So the first one is kind of what Tom and I were talking about, the extra legality / immorality of regular and superheroes. So I think the film is kind of asking us, like, how do the characters' behaviors fit with our definitions of superheroes? why does Nolan want to challenge traditional superheroism? You can also write about the appeal and charm of villains, specifically the Joker. Do villains show us the truth about our own nature, a truth that we are too cowardly to face in ordinary situations, or do they allow us a different and darker escapism? How does the Joker do this in the film? Asks you about authority figures. Does the film suggest we should be suspicious of authority figures? Like politicians, police, and the military, because they are corrupt, violent, or fallible? Or does it teach us that even when heroes seem to act villainous, they are doing it for the greater good, and we should just trust them, and that they know what they're doing, and that they're protecting us by making difficult choices so that we don't have to? You can write about the problems with democracy and the fairy scene. How can democracy lead to immorality and moral atrocity? Does the film say we should doubt in the power of democracy, but then what does it offer us instead? Like one person rule, that's dictatorship. That's not great either, right? What is the film saying about the nature of people and their innate goodness or corruption, their ability to handle the truth, especially at the end of the film? Why do we need to protect people from certain truths? So this is when they didn't tell people that Harvey went bad. How does it go? They lied to the whole city. How does it go against the idea that the truth will set you free? And then the last one is kind of Dark Knight's diversity problem. The primary roles of most of the lines in the film are those of Batman, Harvey, Joker, Alfred Gordon, Lucius Fox, all played by white men, with one important exception, Lucius Fox, right? What are women like in the film? Rachel doesn't really have much of a role. Her role is kind of she's helpless to help herself throughout the film. She doesn't even try to free herself in the warehouse. She just waits to be rescued. And then Barbara is Gordon's wife. Like her whole role is basically to just cry and scream. And then the other woman we have is Ramirez. She's a dirty cop because of her mother's hospital bills, right? So if you think about like all the women that are portrayed in this film, it's not great. And then you can also think about and talk about race. Is there a problem with the idea that Batman is Gotham's Dark Knight, but like he's not black, right? Like very visibly not black. Harvey is the White Knight. He's pure, he's wholesome, he's good. They're all still white. All the major players are white. And, you know, Batman could never be mistaken as black because his chin is out, right? Right? Unlike a lot of other superheroes, like Iron Man could be black inside, even though we know he's not. Spider-Man, all that other stuff. Batman's got like the chin, never going to be mistaken as anything other than white, right? Is the film kind of reinforcing the idea that white is good and dark equals bad? How is it challenging it? Okay, so those are like all the topics that I think the film like starts to kind of like raise. So pick one, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and this one could be 6A or 6B, and write about it for a couple of minutes. Sorry, I didn't give you more time to kind of write about this.
Do you want us finishing this now, or can we finish it like after class? Like,
yeah, definitely. You can finish it whenever you'd like. And it's going to be kind of an ongoing thing, so you can return to it at later classes as well and get credit for it. But yeah, you can start it now. You can start it later. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. I'm gonna stop sharing so that you guys can all have your whole screen. So I know we're out of time. I just kind of wanted to kind of let you know. So for next class, we're going to start reading articles about what scholars have said about this film. So for next class, we're reading a historical analysis. So writing about movies all about historical analysis. And then we're reading an example of a historical analysis called The Dark Knight and Terrorism by John Ipp. So that's what's for next time. These are some recommended readings, but you're not going to be quizzed over those. But if you're interested in like justice or terrorism and post 9/11 superhero films, you know, give them a look. Okay. All right. Good.
Professor.
Have a great weekend. I'll see you on Monday morning. Thanks for an excellent class today and for talking about Dark Knight with us.
Bye, Professor.
Have a
Bye.
good one.
Have a good one.
Bye.